Hey, I'm Evan. I am the co-founder and CEO of O of One Labs, the team that built Mina Protocol, and I'm happy to be here at Reimagine.
Hello and welcome to Reimagine 2021. This is our ninth conference in a monthly series of events bringing you nothing but the best projects, bright minds, and leaders in the space. This month's theme is Game of Chains, Battle for the Thrones. Super excited to be talking about blockchain technology, their use cases, the applications, and I have another exciting interview for you today. We've been fortunate enough to invite many talented individuals and teams to come speak with us, providing updates, insights, and all the above that's happening in crypto. I'll be your host today, Adam from the MouseBelt team, where we focus on early stage investments through our accelerator or providing development support to a number of growing projects, as well as education within our MouseBelt University program. Our main objective and goals are pretty simple. It's increasing adoption, use cases, and real world applications. We seek to educate our audience on blockchain by helping them understand crypto's real impact. So again, thank you all for tuning in. We're pretty much going on a year now for the last 12 months, firing off video content every month. And we actually have a reoccurring guest here. It seems like it's Evan's a friend of the show, becoming a friend of the show. First and foremost, I have Evan Shapiro, co-founder of O1 Labs, Mina Protocol, who developed Mina Protocol. Evan, how you doing, man? Welcome back.
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
Awesome. So I've heard of your team actually probably a few years ago now. I'm based out of San Francisco. You were obviously based out of San Francisco at one point. Now you're chilling in Hawaii. How's it going out there, man? How's the weather? How's the crypto scene? Have you been able to focus a little more or a little less?
Oh, it's really beautiful, but I've definitely been able to focus more. It's mostly been like me really just, we went through so much in the last 6 months or so with the project. Just spending most of my time either just sitting outside where it's nice or just at the computer working.
Typical blockchain day, 24/7, 365, just working. But that's good to hear, man. At least you're safe and healthy. Glad for you to join us and participate. I know you're super busy. As I mentioned in the intro, we're chatting about a few things today, or the topic and theme around Reimagine this month is just the various technologies, blockchain kind of projects that are out there. You guys have done some solid, work over the last few years. I met some of your team, like I said, here in San Francisco. So first things first, anybody can catch a lot of your interviews already about kind of the tech, what you guys, the infrastructure, how it's built out. So I want to keep it a little bit fresh this time. And I haven't chatted with you, in the last few months or since you've been on, at the end of the year. But what are your thoughts around DeFi? I kind of want to talk about applications and use cases. I want to talk about how you guys wrote about some use cases that Mina might be good for and things that you're hoping could be developed on, and we'll get that towards the end. But what have been your thoughts after the DeFi summer? We're going about 10 months in. Are we in a good place? And how do you view DeFi from your perspective?
I think DeFi is really interesting because it's both has a lot of the pieces together to build something, but also I think it's still not really exactly sure what it's there for yet. I think we kind of know what it'll be there for in the future, but at least today it's just kind of like this circular economy of tokens. At the same time, it's a circular economy of tokens built on really amazing building blocks that are a lot better than if you were to try to do this without crypto. And those same building blocks can be deployed for the real world at some point and then be really impactful. So if that makes sense, I'm super excited about it technically. And I think it's one of the first steps to unlocking real finance on crypto. At the same time, it's we haven't applied that yet to its full potential. So it's kind of in a interesting place right now.
And do you follow anything from the lending side, the borrowing side, just kind of the swapping side? And then how does maybe we could tie it in a little bit into Mina, and does Mina from a blockchain technology standpoint, does DeFi fit into Mina, and is that possible and composable?
Yeah, so I generally just follow it kind of very directly following the Lego bricks metaphor. I'm like, I try to follow how the stacks are all coming together. And the way that Mina fits into this is we think about all these building blocks as being potentially extremely useful for real people, but real people not having the opportunity to get on them yet. Like there's already a crazy amount of activity from like rich people trading crypto, but what is the possibility when real people can actually start using this stuff? Mina fits into that. Mina, very, very short on Mina, people that don't know it. It's a succinct blockchain. It's extremely lightweight, so it's very decentralized, and you can scale it without sacrificing decentralization. It also uses zero knowledge proofs, which also gives it the ability to bake in some privacy and scalability features for developers that are cool. Anyway, yeah, back to DeFi. One of the things we're very excited about is the use of zero knowledge proofs in protocols like Mina to be able to pull data privately from the real world into crypto to start kind of creating crypto. I think is like, I don't know if I want to use the word matured. I think it's a little too early for that, but at least within its little bubble, it's matured at this point. There's a lot going on, and it feels like we know what's happening within the space of crypto. I think now it's about how do we start connecting the real world and crypto together, and things like privacy with zero knowledge proofs, things like verifying off-chain data with some of the stuff we're working on with Mina. All that becomes very important in making DeFi start becoming really real with the stuff that we've already kind of figured out within the crypto ecosystem.
Where do you land on the decentralization aspect and centralization? Like, are you, and I've asked this before to a lot of our speakers, regarding decentralization, are you like everything should be decentralization, nothing should be centralization, or are you kind of in the middle? I think when we think of decentralization, we, some people try to figure out like how decentralized it is, and you're only as decentralized as, your central point, I guess. But where do you fall in that spectrum of, is it for certain verticals, certain industries, or are you kind of a believer that maybe everything, will be decentralized at some point in the stack somewhere?
Yeah. I guess I don't ascribe any kind of like what will happen to any of this. I think it's kind of like what we decide, sort of. I think what's interesting is like, I don't think it matters that much when a space is early to be decentralized versus not. I think that when people are experimenting, when people are trying things out, it's not as big of a deal. Like for DeFi today as it is right now, some things are centralized, some things are becoming less centralized, some of them have paths to being decentralized. It's okay. Like we're an experiment. I think that where this starts feeling more urgent or more important to me is okay, like, this may seem crazy right now, but imagine it's 10 years from now and crypto kind of is mainstream, and everyone just uses crypto. No one thinks about it. It's just like part of our lives. It is a good chance of happening, I think. And in that world, when people say, oh, like, yeah, I use crypto, like what do they mean? Do they mean they use some collection of centralized services that are tied together with a composable protocol? Or do they mean I'm actually using something that is decentralized in a way where there's not any single entities that have, kind of control over their users? And what I think is interesting is like, sort of in the centralized world, we haven't actually changed anything about the underlying power structures with crypto if we are in that future. But if we're in the decentralized future, we've like made an immense amount of change. And at that point, it's who actually is collectively owning it as users that makes it a good or bad change, I think. But I think it's extremely important in the long term, because I think that's the promise of crypto, is to create this like better future where users are more aligned with their products. But anyway.
Yeah, no, you bring up some good points there. I think when everybody's experimenting, trying to figure it out, it's just kind of like, let's get some users on board. Let's make sure, it flows right. There's product market fit, as opposed to worrying about how decentralized it is or centralized, it currently is, right? And I think, and I've heard that too, a lot of these projects start out one way and, hope to become a little bit more decentralized as time goes on. But until then, they're just trying to make the best kind of current product for what the market wants, what people need, and maybe what people are looking for. So thank you for that. You kind of touched on a lot of cool points or critical points. Another kind of boon that has recently happened to is NFTs. And I ask about DeFi and I ask about NFTs because, again, people can catch you a lot of YouTube, a lot of interviews. You've done a lot of interviews. And I always like to shed light and extract a lot of the tech, a lot of like kind of what we're building specifically, so that anybody that tunes into this can like really understand where we're going with it. And you just touched on the DeFi aspect of crypto and using, different companies to come in and out of crypto and et cetera, et cetera. So and it's good to get your thoughts and perspectives on, how you see the markets forming and what the direction's going to. But what are your thoughts on NFTs? Do you think this is like a trend or a bubble? Are you a believer? And then also, how does Mina like tie into the NFT kind of tech space?
I think that with NFTs, I think, are this thing that it's not as big as like DeFi. It's not as big as all of decentralized finance, but it's still a thing.
Yeah.
And it's a thing, I think, in that you have these objects which are kind of symbols that a lot of people are kind of all sharing. They've kind of shared agreement on what the symbol is that represents something and how much they care about that symbol. And it's a chance to like, have some ownership over that symbol. I think it's really cool when these things start interacting with other technologies. Like there's a big difference, I think, between something like an NFT that says I have KYC'd or something like that. Here's an identity or something like that kind of NFT, versus an NFT, which is I think the more popular one right now, which is here's like an art piece I own, or here's some community right that I have purchased for some artist or something. I think the thing that's most exciting to me about NFTs are, I don't know, I guess I think that the thing that is most interesting to me is that the possibility of owning non-fungible rights over actions you can perform in a community or things you have access to. What I think is less good about them is that it's just like entirely financial. Like I think it's kind of funny that I could just put a bunch of capital down if I had it and I wanted to, and I like was this interested in like purchase the right to some action in the community. I don't know if that's like the right way to distribute access in that way.
Yeah.
But I think that they don't have to be distributed access in that way. As a technology, they kind of open up a broader landscape of possibilities. Anyway, yeah.
Do you think there's going to be some overlap with NFTs and DeFi?
I think so. I think that you have to separate NFTs, the technology, from NFTs, how they're thought of right now. I mean, like, okay, there's a really obvious connection here, which is like, obviously, I think there can be a DeFi marketplace for like the NFTs that represent my art or whatever I bought. Like, totally, that's like a thing.
Yeah.
I think what gets more interesting is if these NFTs start, I guess this is more fungible, but roles within a DAO or roles within a protocol. I don't know. I think usually those are usually more fungible though. So usually more to figure out. I don't know. I think there's good experimentation possibilities in this space.
It's interesting you brought up kind of, NFTs aren't as big or didn't maybe like kind of the value of the NFT market obviously hasn't touched the DeFi market. But I will say that NFTs have been able to shed more light maybe into crypto, like mainstream, and which is good. And I think, would you say like maybe the UI UX is, or kind of the application has been able to support that kind of mass appeal on the NFT rather than DeFi? Like, how do you use swaps in this? What rather than an NFT? Like you just explained it. It's kind of like simple, but it's unique, and people can at least get on and off an NFT in some capacity.
maybe like if we think of DeFi as this as a platform, then NFT is like an application on it. And I think that's like way more easy to understand. Like there's this abstract notion of all these, processes that are going on that are making finance possible. That's kind of hard to wrap your head around. NFT is just like, it's like a thing I can interact with, that I know I can own it. It's like, I know what it is. I think that's actually really accurate. And I think if we like are imagining drawing like a crypto finance stack, we imagine NFTs being like one step up than DeFi, and NFTs can in that way kind of be a gateway drug into DeFi and broader crypto.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. It's a good point.
Right. Kind of bring, we got to find something that'll attract more users, different users, everyday users, and whatever the case is. So no, thanks for that. And again, I'm just touching on some of these things that people are still trying to understand what DeFi is, what NFTs are. And it's always good to hear from industry pros in kind of a digestible way that, people can understand it and relate to it a little bit better. So let's get back to Mina. How important is it for Mina to build a strong community of developers, users, and the power of kind of your followers, right? People that are looking at your technology. How important kind of Ethereum has a massive community. There's a lot of projects out there developing on, but they also have their own challenges and hurdles and all that. How important is a community to Mina in terms of like growth and ecosystem and I don't know, survivability?
Yeah, I think it's, well, I say this through the lens of a lot of the stuff we do is thinking very long term. We think, what can we do to build really strong foundations for things? What can we do to, set ourselves up for many multipliers down the road instead of just getting one multiplier now? Like, what can we do for these sorts of things? And in that context, I think especially community is very important, and we think about it a very particular way. In that, I think these crypto communities are a little complicated. They're not just like, they have a lot of moving parts. They have incentives, they have tasks people are doing, they have relationships between different people, they have people performing extremely different functions. And the goal then is how can you, and you also, like, I think as a project, you're very light touch at this, like help do what you can to support what I think is kind of the natural kind of opportunity or possibility that lies in the community initially to come out. And this is just to kind of lay the groundwork for me saying that community is very important, and we are putting most of our resources into building up our core technical and core community members.
And especially in this space, right? We're trying to train, teach, educate Web 2.0 devs, university students, getting them into the space. So 2 questions. One, how do we get more developers, developing into the space? What are your thoughts there on engineers, developers, like contributing, right? Training them, and how do we do that? And then 2, how does Mina provide development like resources? And basically, I'm trying to tailor this specific question really to the developers that might be tuning in right now. And if they were looking to develop, what do you guys offer for them, and how can they kind of get more involved and learn about it, and again, get more dApps, built on your protocol?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I guess, like how we're thinking about this question, we're planning for it, is that I think that for one, we're trying to lower the barrier as much as possible to what we're doing. So we're planning on, or we're it's basically settled, so it's going to happen, supporting our application development through JavaScript. We don't have any new fancy language you have to learn. It's just JavaScript. The next thing I think is what we're doing with Mina also is providing something really novel you can do with this, something that it's not just something that is I think, as like myself, I did computer science and I did some research for a while, and I really like programming. What can you give me that is a primitive that it couldn't do before? Like, ignore like, you can give me a library, that's cool, whatever, but like, what is a fundamental computational primitive I can get that I didn't have access to before? I think crypto gives you that. And what we're doing with Mina is giving you access to that through zero knowledge proofs. We're wrapping those up in a really easy to use way where it'll still be available through this JavaScript framework, where you can start accessing some of the privacy, some of the verifiability features of snarks when you're programming for Mina. And we're thinking about this in terms of, we got to produce like a beautiful SDK. Like it has to be so easy to use and so like easily understandable that you can start using it and looking at examples pretty quickly. B, we want to do some series of workshops or something of the like, where it gives you a real chance to start learning the new ways you can use this technology. Because it's one thing to say, this gives you privacy, this gives you verifiability, and then not dive into some examples of what that actually looks like and show you as a developer how you can actually do that in some lines of code. And then I think lastly with crypto is, this is how I usually learned as a developer, is just like, give me like some opportunity or structure to do a side project. Can we do that in like a really cool way? And our strategy around this is basically that's Mina's zero knowledge proofs unlock all these new functionalities that I think are extremely cool, both within and outside of crypto. We just want to show that to developers and show them what they can do with it. And
yeah, no, that's awesome. And what was your experience actually like? I guess going from, because I think you were at another tech company and you're a developer. How was your transition? If there was a developer right now that was, looking to switch it up, how was your experience going from developing one way, into kind of, blockchain?
Yeah, I think that there's two kinds of blockchain development that you can think about. One is protocol development, and the other is application development. And for me, like, I'm definitely on like the protocol development side of this. Like my background is like computer science, distributed systems, so some research. And I think that lended really well to like reading all the white papers for all these crypto protocols coming out and like being able to start interacting with them. I think that's extremely cool. Like, I think for me, honestly, like if I was to be a programmer right now, I think crypto is one of the coolest things you could work on, because it's just like kind of like this perfect connection of all these different fields of computer science that come together in like this really beautiful way in these protocols, where you have like data structures and you have algorithms and you have like distributed systems and networking. They're all kind of there. So I think that's awesome. I think that if you're, I don't know exactly the path to like straight to like application development, like dApps, because I did it through protocol for today's dApps, because today's dApps, you have to kind of learn Ethereum and Solidity. And I think there's a lot of really good templates that you can actually learn that off of. So I'd recommend that probably. There's a lot of really good templates for existing applications and ways to write new applications that are really good. But for us, we're just like, can we just do everything in JavaScript and make this like really familiar to people so that they don't have to learn quite as much of a threshold before they can get going with Mina?
Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm glad that you kind of broke that down, actually, protocol and dApp development and kind of the efforts that it takes either one, and looking for the resources available. And you've you've mentioned a couple things in terms of like developing a protocol that is good, that has some primitive, that is good in multiple ways that you probably couldn't do before. So it's kind of like a good segue actually into applications that you're looking or hoping that get developed on Mina, or the 3 use cases that you guys actually wrote about, and maybe you can touch on some of those. Again, I'm trying to highlight the purpose, the point, the objectives, the goals of blockchain, and how founders like yourself and look at the future. So maybe at first, what would you like to see developed? And then 2, let's talk about the use cases that you guys had chatted about, suggested, a few months back, and maybe what the status of that is. If, maybe they come to fruition, or we're back to the drawing board, whatever explain kind of that process.
Yeah, so I can definitely go through these. I think that they're all pretty high potential possibilities, but I'll go through like the one that's kind of furthest along and we've also put the most resources into, because I also think it really connects really well back to the DeFi stuff we were talking about earlier. which is that we're working with a Ethereum company, Teller Finance, to provide them access to verifying people's credit scores in a way that's private but still on chain. So what I mean by that is you have all this information that's right now financial, that's like off chain, because in this case, credit scores. We want to go to a smart contract and prove to that smart contract, my credit score is greater than 700. Now, if you were to do this naively on a cryptocurrency, you have two problems. The first is you need an oracle that tells you about an individual's credit score. This isn't like a general fact that's just like out there in the world. It's like, what is my particular credit score? And then two, I want to put on chain a proof that my credit is greater than 600 or something. If I'm going to do that, then how I do that privately? I don't want to put my social, I don't want to put my credit score on Ethereum necessarily, or no, I don't want to do that. So the key with snaps is that we're able to verify data from a website, in this case, creditkarma.com, that says my credit score is X. And then we're able to produce a proof about that credit score that shows the end to claim, which is that my credit score is greater than 600, and maybe that my name is one of the names in a database, but not the specifics, not exactly what my credit score is, not exactly my social security number. And the idea here is that with this sort of thing, we can start bringing on all the off-chain data that exists into crypto and start making things like DeFi more real. And there's a huge market that seems to be like, there's a huge market, for like under collateralized lending, for people to be able to start interacting with stuff if they're not already wealthy or they want to use it for real use cases. And this is a way that
I think that's important.
Yeah,
that's super important for those that maybe don't know, but like in the crypto space, you don't need some of the credit score. You don't need a credit score. You don't need this. The problem with that is, and Evan and his team is working on that, is that you have to over collateralize to borrow. Yeah, you can borrow, but you got to put more collateral down, which kind of ties that up. And the solution that Evan is looking at is hopefully at some point you don't have to do that, and we can rely on other data points to say, I am qualified to lend or borrow or whatever the case is, which is crucial. I guess you're right, which is kind of the evolution of going from DeFi over collateralization to like, hey, let's kind of bring in, traditional aspects, the best of our ability, and still keep it private, secure, and decentralized.
Yeah, exactly. So like, it's this funny challenge of we have to bring all this data into the chain that's already centralized, but there's a lot of it. So you can have like a lot of variety, and you can have a lot of different places you can pull the data from. So it's somewhat distributed, at least in that sense. But then you want to pull it in with privacy. You want to pull that data in securely. Can we start doing that? And like you're saying, exactly, like this is a way to start making that happen with DeFi.
Awesome. And so what other use cases that I was reading on here? Let me see here. Did you already touch on all of them, or
if it's the three, I think I know them all. I can
yeah.
Happy to talk.
Okay, cool.
Like I think that the next one I'm excited about is like kind of the general possibility of what it means to pull and verify data from the internet on chain. Like I talked about this example with Credit Karma, but credit scores are just one kind of data. And the transactions I have in my bank account are another kind of data, but also the headlines in New York Times are a kind of data. How many followers I have on Twitter is a kind of data. Like one place I think this is particularly interesting is I recently have like, it's probably like a month ago, but it feels long ago now, like the BitClout controversies of that piece of software. Basically that they weren't necessarily maybe doing the most ethical things with how they pulled Twitter information and started tokenizing it. But you can imagine doing what they're doing in a fully decentralized way, where you start pulling people's tweets on chain and turning them into NFTs without really having any kind of centralized party at all in the middle of that, which is pretty cool if you're a developer, being able to take any website or any information, just put it on chain and turn it into an NFT, turn it into useful input to another computation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And like, how does one do that actually at a high level? if somebody's like, all right, that's great. Like, how would I integrate it? How do I develop on this? Like, what do I need to work with Credit Karma? What are kind of some of the inner workings? And, obviously you don't have to go technical into this, but just what does the flow look like if one was like, all right, I want to pull in credit scores. Do I have to talk to Credit Karma? Do I need a plug-in API? How does it work?
So the great thing is you actually don't need to partner with anyone. You can just do this because they're already on the internet. And the way this works is it uses HTTPS. So HTTPS doesn't exactly give you like a cryptographic signature of data on a website, but it gives you close enough so that if you enter into a multi-party computation with a few people, you can get a verification that provided the underlying assumptions were true about the multi-party computation, that you are ending up with the actual data that you want. And you can make this multi-party computation pretty safe. You can say that if there's n people involved, as long as one of them is honest, I'm good to go with like taking this data off any website on the internet. And so you can imagine that if I choose my places are, in some dream world in the future where like we've released this, like, it's like O of1 Labs, it's MIT, it's like, I don't know, Apple. You can imagine there being a large variety of institutions that probably are not going to collude. And that lets you, as long as one of them are being honest, pull data off the internet on chain in like a really secure way. From a developer's perspective, this will be a library so that you can just write code that says, X equals pull data in from Y, and Y is like a URL. But under the hood, it's what I just kind of mentioned with the one of n trust model and stuff.
Nice. No, that's cool. I think it's good for others to understand kind of how it works, and if everybody watching this, if you want to, learn more, what's the website where they can look some of this stuff up?
I just go to minaprotocol.com is like the best one. We have our blog there. We have like a lot of links to explain a lot of the stuff that I just talked about. Our Twitter is also where you're going to hear updates on some of the stuff I've talked about. So Great. That's the place for that.
Great. So I have like two more questions, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So second to last question kind of goes into like education. Do you think our university students get enough support kind of learning about either, people think blockchain is new, but really decentralized, distributed systems, cryptography, algorithms, consensus mechanisms have been around for decades. Do you think there's enough support? I know you came from Carnegie Mellon, studying, through there. How do you see kind of the university landscape and preparing like for the future of tomorrow, the workforce of tomorrow?
So when I was at Carnegie Mellon, the blockchain was a thing, but it wasn't like no one taught it or anything. I don't even think there was a club then, but it was something that we talked about on the side. And also sometimes our professors would tell stories about, because like they were also learning about it and getting involved. One of them had an algorithm to ramp up and down server farms to be mining centers when that was still like profitable sometimes. And there's some cool stories there on that end. But I think back then, like clearly no, it was too early. I think that now I recently did a talk back at Carnegie Mellon, and I met some people that are currently there, and they have a whole blockchain club. I think they have like courses and related things going on. It's definitely much farther along, and I think it's getting there, but it's definitely still lagging, I think, where the space is going to be. And I will mention, I think that one place in particular that things are lagging is on, I think crypto is really good in terms of optimizing short-term financial markets, but like it's bad at asking where do we want to be in the long run. And I wonder what universities are doing or can do to start getting people thinking about what's kind of society do we want to live in with crypto like 10 years from now? Because I think if we just follow short-term markets, it's unclear exactly where we'll end up. And I think that the university is a great place to start thinking about that kind of thing.
No, that's awesome. And we have a university program, and that's the reason why I ask. Like, cool. Some schools have support, some students have support, some clubs do, some are, more advanced. You have your others that are super advanced and consulting. So I just wanted to get your take on kind of your experience and, what we should do. But obviously, there's always work to be had, and contributing in figuring out a way to support them is probably ideal for the whole industry as a whole, and that was kind of that. Last question here. And you might have touched on it throughout this whole thing, but maybe I can just wrap it up. Like when we talked about DeFi and we talk about crypto in general, at one point, even before the boom, I was kind of just thinking like, are we just, exchanges, are we just replicating like Web 2.0 and traditional legacy systems? And I think I've heard you like say like, we're trying to innovate with cryptocurrency, right? Like there are some things that you can plug and play from, Web 3.0 to 2.0, but ultimately we're kind of on the breach of innovating like beyond, these current landscapes into something that we don't even know, like you said, we don't know what's going to happen 5-10 years from now, but it's going to be kind of interesting. It's going to be super advanced. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts again before we wrap this up in terms of how crypto and blockchain, we're not trying to plug into the past. We're actually trying to think of different ways, unique ways of either doing business, managing this, managing that. So yeah, I'd like to wrap it up with kind of your thoughts there on kind of a difference and the impact, you're trying to make, moving forward.
I think that the key opportunity for crypto is I think it will rebuild all the stuff that we've talked about, and that's bad or good, we don't know yet, but I think it will do so potentially in a way that's aligned with the users, where the users are the ones owning the platform. And I think that this is like very clearly what people want. Like if you look at like GameStop and all the other meme stocks, if you look at like Dogecoin, I think people want to have control over their platforms. And I think that's the potential here is like, once you've made this thing into a protocol that can then be forked, it can be modified by anyone, it just like exists out in the world. Can we as people then control them? Can we as people own them in a way that wasn't possible before crypto happened? And this is like the key question that like kind of drives me to like keep putting all my energy into this is like, is that future possible? What kind of technology do we need to make it happen? What kind of community do we need to make it happen? And I think that it's like the only kind of point that is stable, if that makes sense. Like if it's not there, you're going to end up in kind of GameStop Dogecoin world, which is like kind of entertaining, I guess, but I don't know if I want to like live in that society forever.
Totally.
So I think that's where it has to converge if it does converge. And that's I think the potential here with crypto.
You're right. I think that's kind of the common ground, like the foundation of, what we're striving for. And for those, following this conference, following all of our, our interviews, this one specifically, like we've gotten so used to giving up our data, our info, our personal, like, lives, that it's made it easier. And, your Apples of the world, your Facebooks of the world, your Twitters of the world, like the Googles, they control all of our privacy or, information or data points. And I think we kind of forget about that. Because a lot of things have come easy, right? To log in, log out, just give it, type in whatever, give up whatever information. And you're right. It's gonna converge back to, I guess, the users and managing it ourselves in terms of like what we think we should give up to applications, companies, and really taking that self-control back as much as possible. So I think you definitely hit the nail on the head. And for those that are watching, that's kind of what crypto and blockchain is all about. We've gotten used to all of the big four, the FANG, and giving them what they want. And I think moving forward, do you, one other question, do you think the FANG companies, FANG, like, is there an opportunity for them to go decentralized, do you think, or provide a solution or a product? And is that a concern or a risk that we should be thinking about, or not really?
Definitely. I mean, I think it's a huge opportunity for us and for them at the same time as like, got to be a little careful. They don't like co-opt it at the same time. Like, this is something I can see Apple doing for sure. Apple like has shown they actually mostly care about their hardware. They think the software should be user controlled more or less. Where it's a funny little detail in there where they also want to kind of wall everything off a little bit, but at the end, I think they are kind of at least have their heads in an okay place at the end of the day. I could see them doing something I think snarks, for example, like the recent stuff around privacy, identity, COVID tracking, like zk-snarks are like the actual proper way to solve these problems. And so I think it's only a matter of time before we start seeing those like zk-snarks out in those big companies. At the end of the day, though, like those companies are owned by their shareholders and they're going to want to profit. And if their business model is against the users that they're serving, like in Facebook's case, most extremely, I think you kind of end up at the same place, but there's also opportunity. So
awesome. So I know we've kind of gone a little over here, but Evan, you've been on twice. We want to thank you for your participation. Where can people, I guess, again, you mentioned a little bit, but maybe we could wrap it up with, where can people get updates, insights, and where should they go to learn more? Yeah,
I think our Twitter is the best place. Just like Mina Protocol is a Twitter. We just post a bunch of updates there. And how
about Discord or Telegram or anything?
Discord's good. Telegram's good if you have questions that are high level. Discord's really good if you want to plug into like the more technical community. People there are also really helpful, like, and happy to kind of just chat. So
nice.
And it's like pretty big too. So I think all those are good options. Just depends what you're looking for.
Awesome. So for everybody tuning in, this is Evan Shapiro. He is the co-founder of O1 Labs. They created and developed the Mina Protocol. So, we're going to wrap up this conversation. Very pleasant, very interesting, very critical to what they're developing, which is unlike a lot of the other protocols in general. So I suggest you look them up. And you definitely be interested and you'll like what they're doing and the impact and benefit that they're making to its users, to the industry, and to our future as a whole. So again, Evan, thank you for taking the time out. We hope to have either you back or maybe somebody else from your team to the next couple events, but stay safe and we'll talk again.
Thanks. Yeah. Fun being on again.
All right. For everybody, this is Reimagine 2021. I'm your host, Adam, and we'll talk to you again.